All right, we have people still coming in, but we have a good group of 23 folks that are starting. So I'm going to pass it over to Brad, who will be having a coffee chat with Judy Haber. Over to you, Brad.
Great, thanks, Mary Beth. So happy to have everybody on board for this. It's a sort of first of a series that we're hoping to launch, and really kind of creating an open format for conversation about what's going on in sponsorship, dealing with some of the issues that are going on. So we have Judy today talking about municipal sponsorship and some of the challenges around that. We've got a session next week with Brent talking about general sponsorship and what we can be doing in the next 6 months, and some of the tactics that we can take on board and develop into coming out of the crisis, and making sure we're ready and have our partners informed and engaged. And then we're working with a couple other organizations to bring on a conversation about integrating tech and looking at virtual engagement. We've got a conversation we're going to be having around sports and the effect of what's being seen in the sports industry, and the money that's moving from sports to other elements, and how they're going to be challenged with the upcoming season, if the seasons happen. So it's keep watching out, and we're trying to place this for every Wednesday afternoon, and trying to limit the conversations about 40 to 60 people. We'll see how that works. We really want it to be an interactive piece. As much as Judy and I can both talk for a full hour, it's really about being collaborative. There's a lot of questions that people have, a lot of knowledge and things that you can share with us and with each other. And Judy and I are just going to set the stage today about municipal sponsorship, some of the challenges around that. My experience has been on the property and brand side, working as a seller, working as somebody who's doing placement, on the consultation side, doing management consulting strategy. And then for the last number of years with Sponsor Circle, we've developed a tech platform that helps brands and people looking for sponsorship find one another and really deal with all the clutter that's coming through. And then happy to have Judy as part of this, because Judy's just got such a wealth of experience in municipal sponsorship, with naming rights, and engaging with councils, mayors, and the challenges and uniqueness of this. So Judy, I'm not going to sell everything on you. I think it's easier for you to talk about yourself, so I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you again, Brent. Nice smile. And Jennifer. And I recognize a couple people here. I see Orangeville is here, close to my heart. Welcome back. I can see you smiling. Today really isn't about me. The session is about you. And we had a session yesterday with Jennifer Bishop, and I'm going to do my best not to repeat what was said yesterday. So to talk really very briefly about our work, how we got into this business and the process, and I mean briefly, and then turn it over to you so that we can have a highly engaged conversation, so that you can walk away having, 3 great outcomes, ideally. Even one would be terrific. So very briefly, we started in the business of corporate sponsorship in the early 90s, doing event sponsorship and working with a retailer. And again, those of you who have heard me speak on events, we all know why retailers, and at that time it was Shoppers Drug Mart, are ideal naming rights partners. And again, to fill in the answers for you, they're ideal because of all of their suppliers. So for those of you who are selling events, give some consideration to who are ideal naming rights partners. And the giveaway there really is it's their B2B relationships that sometimes we don't consider when we're selling. Then in '96, put Hummingbird's name on what was then the O'Keefe Center, now called, I believe, the Meridian Hall, and learned quite a bit in '96. That was a long time ago. And, council really hadn't had as much experience as they do present day with renaming a municipal building, or for that matter, even putting a corporate name on a municipal building. And now, 25 years later, you'll see hundreds of buildings across the country that have corporate names on it, which is part of the discussion today. Then we put EPCOR's name on the Calgary Centre for the Performing Arts, and the rest is history. And having worked in markets that are as small as 1,000, so towns with a population of 1,000, like Wynyard, Saskatchewan, or Sedgwick, Alberta, where we were able to generate $500,000 in corporate sponsorship. I mean, that was a big win for those markets. So regardless of your market size, the process is the same, and I will move to that shortly. And then most recently, at least for the past 10 years, we got involved in an event that started, it's pro bono, and it started as it is a charity event where it's a run. And I worked with a friend of mine who knew I had an expertise in sponsorship. I helped him bring in the Lexus and the home builders and the land developers and the fitness clubs and the New Balance. And we were able to satisfy our operating budget before the event occurred, which obviously is the ultimate goal for all of us who are executing events, is to cover our costs before the day of the event, so that everything that comes through the gate or everything that comes to the start line, that's just sheer fat. And if I may brag, our first year we raised $5,000 for the YWCA. And now, 10 years later, we're going to generate $1 million this year for 32 plus charities. So I hold that close to my heart and empathize with all of us who are in the event business, because selling sponsorship for events, it is a skill. Similar to selling sponsorship for buildings, there is a process, and we're here to really talk about that sales process. And if I may just end, Brad, and then turn it over to you. What's been similar with all of our clients over the past 25 years is the role we play with council in terms of educating council about the business of corporate sponsorship versus philanthropy. Often they don't know the difference. To educate the mayor, to ascertain the mayor's interest, his or her, in the process. Do they want to be involved in the sales call? Can we use their name when calling on companies? That's rather critical to us, and it certainly is right now for me, present day, and the success that I've enjoyed over the past month. So it's council education, council engagement, it's identification of assets, whether it's Canada Day, whether it's a rec facility, whatever your properties are, we identify them. We develop a sponsorship strategy. Do we sell our least expensive property, our most expensive property? What are the terms for those properties? Again, all in consultation with council. And then once we get their approval, we develop a prospect list. And that too is approved by council, because we don't want to find that we've approached Toyota and they've offered to name our skateboard park or our library, and find that council has changed their mind. And we all know that council can change their mind, and it's happened to me several times, and I'm sure, Brent, it's happened to you as well. That's another story we can tell at another time, deals that don't go through. So again, back to the process, it's highly engaged with council or your board of governors. There's an approval process for every step. There's education, there's valuation, there's packaging, prospecting, and then the sales, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Great, thanks, Judy. And I think the process piece is really interesting. The fact that you're actively selling right now, and for a lot of people and a lot of organizations we're working with, they've kind of gone into a bit of a freeze status right now, trying to figure out, is this the right time to be going out? Should we wait? Council is otherwise occupied. So what are sponsors looking for right now? How are you engaging with them? And has your process changed at all?
Well, I'm going to answer your question, Brad, about what our sponsors looking for. I do want to refer to the comment you just made, whether or not municipalities should be proceeding. And I just had a conversation with one of my clients literally 20 minutes ago, who is in, for lack of better words, sort of freak out mode. And we all are reading the papers, whether it's the city of Calgary, who just laid off 1,200 employees, town of Halliburton, Barrie, they're all laying off civic employees. So the people that we principally report to are trying to hold on to their desks, literally. They're not in sales like us. They're administrators, and they're wondering, oh my God, the world has come to an end. And it's our role, certainly Brent and myself and Brad and Jennifer, the leaders that I know that are on this call, and really all of you, to eliminate the fear that it's business as usual. For those of us who sell for a living, nothing has changed. We have to be as creative and as strategic as we had to be 6 months ago. As I mentioned yesterday on the call, the script I gave yesterday would have been identical had it been 6 months ago. So to answer your question, and I do encourage, it looks like we do have some people chatting with us, so let's encourage dialogue. I will answer the question, what are sponsors looking for? And I know a number of you are smiling because you know what I'm going to say. Right, Brent? What am I going to say? Jennifer, wherever you are, Leslie, sponsors are looking to sell more products. I know. Fascinating. Hi, Jen. Welcome back with your little plant. It's as simple as that. We learned this 25 years ago when American Express came out with their front of the line, the credit cards and every other category. It could be eggs, it could be carpet, it could be windows. Companies are engaged in sponsorship, whether it's an event or naming rights or whatever it may be, principally to acquire new accounts, to acquire new customers. I mean, this we all know. They want to acquire us, then they want to sell us more. So they want us to bank with them, and then soon, before you know it, they want to sell us tires. So they want to sell us more products, and what else do they want? They want to reward their customers. So it's acquisition and reward. Acquisition, renewal, and reward. So if you can think of your property in that way, whether you're an event or you're a community center, how can you use your property to offer that delivery to a local company? And then I'll make just one more comment. Most of us are selling in communities, whether it's a population of 1,000 or 10,000, or if City of Calgary is here, that's huge. I think about 800,000. People want people who are the decision makers behind companies. So people run companies. People want to support their community, whether you're in Leduc, Alberta, whether you're in Etobicoke, or you're in Orangeville, or you're in Kingston. I mean, we all work in our community, and companies want to support where their children, their family, their employees, where they work, and where they play. And that has always been my strongest sales feature when selling, is that I am selling community, but I never forget that principally when I'm talking to a car company, he too wants to sell cars.
And
Over to you, Brad.
building off of that, do you have any suggestions or advice on people when they're trying to identify what their prospects are they should be pursuing now? So, they know they've got all these community builders. Are there certain silos of organizations that are doing well and could be, very interested in giving to the community at this time?
Well, I'm going to start with the word that you use, community builders. And that takes me to builders. So I always go about my tasks thinking about categories and what categories are making money. Again, that's no different today than it was 6 years ago. So we all know home builders and land developers in particular have great capacity, regardless of the market. They'll have more capacity than a single retail shop. The other category that I've been successful with since this pandemic, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself, Jennifer, is fruits and vegetables, growers. So Mark Saberin just came out today with a report on a deal that I did about 2 weeks ago with a company that plants cucumbers and tomatoes. He happens to have 1,000 employees. And as you all know, going into the grocery store, it's very difficult to find a cucumber on the shelf. So categories that are doing well, and he made the decision over the phone. It was $500,000 for a 10-year term. He's looking to hire. He's part of a community. He's been there for 35 years. And that gave me momentum again for another company in the same category to give us $1 million, which hasn't been approved by council, but I would suggest that it will be in the next 10 days, to rename what was a Kinsman rec facility, to put their name on, replace the Kinsman name, which we had approval for from the Kinsman. And they made that decision in 24 hours to give us $1 million. So from a category point of view, I look to the companies and categories that are making money. And I know all of you on this call can contribute to that list.
And I think one of the key elements you just highlighted, and I'm going to pose it to you, Judy, but I think there's probably a lot of opinions and a lot of advice from everybody across the board here, because we've got a lot of municipalities on here. Is, you've got a deal on the table, you need council to approve it, or you need council to move forward in any capacity, whether it's just even deciding to get going. Council, mayor, they're focused on the public health issue. They're focused on the crisis right now. How are you getting council or those leadership on board and part of the discussion? And if anybody else has opinion or advice on it, please jump in with either a question in the chat or just indicate you want to speak.
Well, I'm going to jump all over that because it's really present day for me. I wrote to my mayor, one of my mayors, who works in a small town on a project that I'm working on. And I asked him to get the cell phone number of a very significant man in the country who's given away hundreds of millions. So I really sent him a text message sort of joking, oh, do you have Sam's email or cell phone? Like, this guy's like a billionaire. And he happens to have a cottage in this community, and why not just call him directly rather than go through all his VP of marketing people, because he'll make a decision in 7 seconds. So, the mayor and the council and the staff are worried about losing their jobs, let's be frank. But mayor and council appreciate that they are going to want new sources of income. And they need to see from us that deals are getting done. There is a pandemic, but companies are, as Brent has referenced in his session, are spending money now. Their messaging may have changed, but they're still selling products and services. They still want to own the community. It's really all about how you position and package your pitch. Brad, let's open it up to other conversations, comments.
Well, I think there's one question. I'm going to throw it to Brent, just because he probably has the best advice on it. Somebody's asked about the fact that municipalities have these sponsors on board. They've got naming rights, or they're part of ongoing programs, and they're seeing that they're losing value because the facilities are closed. How are you addressing that, or do you have clients that are coming to you with those complaints?
Brent, you have to unmute. Can you do it?
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. You're there.
I did, Judy, I did try to unmute it, but it would not allow me to do so. So it's now been done for me, which is great. So thanks, Brad, for bringing me into this.
But tomorrow your dad said he's going to be there.
I think he just unmuted everybody, though.
I think so.
So what I would encourage is that what I would encourage is everybody that's on this call to please individually mute their you can all mute them in the bottom left-hand corner.
We're not hearing any dogs barking yet.
Oh,
that'll be next.
Well, in the evening, so put this exact sentence.
Okay. So again, if everybody just goes down to the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah, I think Brad figured it out.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of thoughts here. Everybody, first of all, is concerned about their sponsors and the fact that their arenas closed down, or their rec centers closed down, or their performing arts centers closed down, or their parks are closed down. And in taking a look at that, there are also, and I'm going to look at the really positive side first, and that's, and this may not seem that positive, but the reality is that some of those facilities are being used as community areas or triage centers. There's a lot of municipalities that would then be directing public awareness towards the ABC company arena, because that's where they're gathering food for the homeless or whatever. So there are some of your partners who are getting incremental exposure at this point in time, or at least equivalent to what they would have got. And they're getting, they also receive some goodwill halo effect to it.
I thought it started at 2, but it started at 1:30.
Hello? Sorry. That they're getting a halo effect because they're now actually part of the solution to the pandemic, being based on the fact that they're building, their name is on that building. The other side, though, is that you're right, that all of you are in the situation with these closed facilities, whether you've sold it, closed it, or whether Judy sold it or closed it, or whoever. It may have been 5 minutes ago, or 5 weeks ago, it might have been 5 years ago. But you have an agreement that says, hey, this is the amount of exposure that we propose that you're going to get, the number of eyeballs. It also means that, We have hockey playoffs that have all been canceled in the month of March in our arena, and all our rink board people aren't getting exposure. As I said in the session last week, is that first and foremost, you need to be communicating with these people, because some of them are going to say, don't worry about it, I'm in this for a 10-year deal, and losing 2 months isn't going to kill me. Or the other side of it is that, hey, find me a make good, find me out how you can actually help me down the road. And maybe that's an opportunity for me to do a experiential opportunity inside that facility during a tournament or something to that effect. But the key is to talk to these people. As many of you know, well, all of you would know that are here as municipalities, is that Hockey Canada around March 12th, basically canceled every single hockey element. Whether it was Timbits hockey or whether it was a private lesson or whatever, anything that Hockey Canada was involved in. And that was started with the on March 7th with the cancellation by Hockey Canada and the IIHF in regards to the women's worlds in Halifax that were canceled. But if you talk to Dana Gladstone over at the VP over at Hockey Canada, who oversees sponsorships, she can tell you right now with Hockey Canada and all those cancellations, she has not to date, and Judy referenced Mark Sabarin in this, and this was also in Mark Sabarin's report today, his sponsorship report, a bi-weekly publication. He commented that Dana has mentioned she has to date, and here we are on April 1st, to date has not lost a single sponsor. Nobody has picked up the phone and said, hey, I want out of my contract. So I think the key to this is to go and talk to these people. If they do want out, you got to let them out. But can you do make goods? Absolutely. And Brad, we can go into that if you want, but I'm gonna leave that up to other questions. But we also have to consider the fact that you as a municipality have to understand what those companies are going through. I mean, if they're the big companies, the Coca-Colas, even your produce companies like that Judy's just closed in the Leamington area. But if we look at smaller SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, we have to understand that, 32%, according to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, the most recent study that they had, which just came out yesterday, was that 32% of those that have closed already, that have presently closed, do not expect to reopen again. So those companies and those businesses are going out of business. They're not just closing for pandemic. They understand their belief that they probably will not be able to open. And we also have to understand that COVID-19, the effect that they have had on these companies, or the effect that they will have on these companies, is to the tune of $160,000 on average for that small and medium-sized business. And we have to also understand that, 1 in 2 of these companies are partially shut, about 30% are still open partially, and the remaining 20% are closed completely. So that's 20% of businesses that are closed. IMI has also done a study, they've done 3 studies on the COVID scenario right now and consumers. And the most recent one came out yesterday. And it's interesting to look at seeing what Judy keeps talking about yesterday and today. And she's absolutely right. Who's making money and who isn't? And, my initial thought was that, organizations such as, the Uber Eats and those companies that are doing delivery services, that they, Skip the Dishes, Foodora, all those, that they would all be booming right now. But the numbers are showing, according to IMI, that basically most people are shifting away from food ordering and eating at home. They are increasing their visits to the box stores like the Costco's and the Walmarts, and decreasing their purchasing at local boutiques, both because they're not open and because they feel more comfortable and safe in the larger organizations. So those are just some of the things that I think you need to consider when you're looking at the fact that your businesses are, your facilities are closed. How can you work with those sponsors to help them through this, give them extra exposure, and then ultimately make good down the road. I hope that helps, Brent.
No, thanks, Brent. That's really good, and I think we've got I'm going to pick on Victoria and Maggie who are on the call, because being in the U.S., what's your experience? We definitely feel that we're ahead of the curve in some of the closures and some of the tactics have been taken from what's been going on in the U.S. I see Victoria, you got your mic off, so do you have thoughts on that?
Well, here in Florida, we've been hit, with waves. I'm in Orlando. I'm not in Miami, thankfully. But what I'm seeing here is, and I also served with Greenworks for the city of Orlando, which is why this conference interested me, because I do work for the city of Orlando in the think tank for our sustainability efforts. I'm with Aerosky Media, Planet Blue. We're an environmental series for kids, which is digital content, which in this day and age, I'm very grateful that we're digital. And the mayor of Orlando is in our show, which Brad and Mary Beth know that. What I'm seeing here is unprecedented. This is a very busy city, and people are just, their budgetary restraints. It seems like here in the United States, people are starting to kind of like gather their eggs, and they're not wanting to spend it right now until they find out what's going to be on the other side. Whether that's, sporting event sponsors, when is the NBA going to start playing again? Is the NFL football season going to kick off? So I'm seeing a lot of, financial restraints coming up here in America for sponsorships. So, Brad.
Yeah, you're in the same path, I think, as what we're experiencing here. And was just curious whether there was a different approach to it, because the American market is always a slightly different animal than dealing with the Canadian market. But it sounds like
I think that because New York City's being hit so hard, I think that it's going to take us a while financially to get back into the game here in the United States. That's just my gut instinct on that. So unfortunately, but
Orlando in particular.
Yes, Orlando in particular. I think Orlando, I think we're going to weather the storm pretty well. We're at 300 right now, confirmed cases, 52 hospitalization. So I think, we have a very aggressive mayor. And I've worked with him for a number of years now. And we did the social distancing pretty much when Trump instated it. So we're at stay-at-home orders, even though we have a lesser degree of cases at this time.
Well, I was really thinking more economics, having done business in Orlando with the university. It's, it's Disney. It's
Disney. I know Disney. I'm in the entertainment industry, so I know Disney really well, and Universal. Yeah.
Without Disney, anyway, it will come back. We will get through this.
Now, I do have a friend who works with Disney through Roush, and he built the Star Wars Galaxy Edge, and he built the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. I'm very great. He's on my team actually for our theme park attractions in the future. We have a meeting with Royal Caribbean to put our TV show into content in the Bahamas, but obviously all of this was in play right before this hit. And so now I had a meeting with Nemours Children's Hospital to put all of this in our, to put the show in the Children's Hospital and interactive installations, and they just postponed my meeting till June.
Yeah.
So, it's basically what I'm seeing here in Central Florida and Disney and Universal, because I've talked to Greg about Disney, and I'm like, okay, so you guys got a $150 million contract to build Tron. Okay, so what is happening with that construction? And he said it's still moving forward, but they're starting to slow the pace a little bit now, because this has taken a little longer for the COVID-19 to go away than we all anticipated. Well,
and as Brad,
the salespeople are like, come on, let's get this over with, So, but go ahead.
Brent just commented it is a hub for conferences, having been there in August.
We had major conferences. We had 5 major big cancellations.
Yeah, but it will come back. And
the conventions I'm worried about. The conventions, as far as a municipality, I'm worried about. I think people are going to be a little germophobia for about a year to 18 months attending conferences. That's in person, unfortunately. I think this might be the new norm for a while.
Well, and that's another subject, I think, Brad, for another day, Brent. I mean, what we're going to be achieving virtually. I've been working, and I know many of you on the call have been selling virtually most of your career. So we don't necessarily have to get on a plane. Anyway, that we can park that for.
Yeah. Whenever you guys, I'll be on a lot of these calls. So when you want to talk about conventions, I'll be right here to help you with what's going on in Orlando. But what I'm seeing is that everyone's waiting like they are in Calgary. Everyone's waiting to see, okay, what's going to be the next blow if there is one. And no one's really wanting to jump on anything until they're really sure what direction. And I think my biggest thing is, I think Orlando's going to be fine. We do have Disney and Universal and SeaWorld and we have great hospitals here as well. But as far as sponsorship goes, I just don't. I guess my biggest question would be like say Southwest Airlines sponsors the Orlando Amway Arena. They have to be really upset right now because those sponsorship dollars are not being put to use because the NBA is closed for the season. So, those are the kind of things that I see that people are, I hope it doesn't make it more difficult for sponsors to get back into the game.
Well, and you do have a revenue stream that we don't have. You have Florida Hospital. Like the healthcare are major sponsors of transportation, etc. We don't have that luxury here in Canada.
But it's Advent Health now. But yes, Florida Hospital is in Orlando Health are big sponsors here.
Oh, good. All right.
And Siemens and Lockheed Martin and you can go on and on. So yeah, it's a good hub.
All right, Brad, over to you.
But I think one of the comments you made, Victoria, is the crisis is going to end. And the challenge is that everybody freezing. Then once we get to a situation where the crisis has ended, everybody's going to be rushing to talk to partners, to get going. And my experience, I've worked with the Ontario Science Centre here in Toronto during SARS, and 40% of our attendance dropped off. It was a massive hit that lasted about 4 months. And when the government came back with their tourism support coming out of that, the marquee event tourism program that came from the feds post 2008, they really wanted you to have planned something that was bigger and better than what you were already delivering. So coming back with your hands out saying, okay, here's the same programming we have, please give us money to support it, really wasn't going to get you in line where you wanted to be. So you needed to have something inventive, something that was pretty unique, and you needed to have partners on board already. So it becomes that soft conversation right now is, what are you doing with your programming team that will look at, when we're out of this, what can we launch that's going to be a draw for whether it's conventions or whether it's a big event, something that can be a bit turnkey and you've got your partners ready to go, so that when the government comes out and says, okay, here's how much we're going to invest in tourism or events or festivals, that you can say, okay, we've got half the money coming from partners, we've got half the money we want to come from you, and this is what we're going to do. That was really successful coming out of SARS in particular. All of the facilities here in Toronto, whether it was the museum, the art gallery, CN Tower, they were looking at pretty significant exhibitions or things that were just new and unique to draw that sponsor dollar, but also draw that tourism dollar back in. Definitely COVID-19 is a different scenario because it's affecting everybody as opposed to just one or two locales. But I know Brent, you went through with Calgary and the floods. Definitely, I think Victoria, you must have experienced some post-hurricane issues.
Hurricanes. Yeah, hurricanes.
And what's your scenario been like, and how have you guys dealt with that?
Thanks, Brad. I think that what we saw back in, and again, it comes down to these are not comparable from the perspective, as you identified. COVID-19 is a global pandemic, bigger than SARS, bigger than swine flu, and the ones I'm going to look at, are regional and localized, and we stop, take a look at it, but the Calgary Stampede, they went ahead and said, hey, we're come hell or high water, we're running the Stampede, and they did, and most of their sponsors stayed on board. The following year, I'm pretty sure, and I'm hoping that to get that information, but that the Stampede, did very well the following year. We watched the NHL lockout that I worked through in the 90s. So that would have been the first lockout. And the reality was that the dollars came back big time. So I think it's going to come back. I think that the real key to it, though, is this is bigger. This is way, way bigger. And I mean, it shut down our economy. I mean, when SARS happened, Brad, you were there in Toronto. It didn't affect the rest of Canada like it affected Toronto. So there were still happenings elsewhere. And the city didn't close down. The city didn't close down completely. I mean, we're in a situation that economics has come to, not a halt, because they're still operating, but when you can't gather more than 3 people without getting a fine, it makes an impact. So it comes back to what I said earlier, is speaking to our clients, speaking to our sponsors, understanding their needs, and then building towards the recovery period, building towards, okay, this is what it's going to look like down the road, and start planning now for the future, and working with those partners as if they were brand new, and helping them to be there when you come out of this, or when we all come out of this. There was a quote that I saw online today. It's by a gentleman by the name of Doug Nelson, a really good guy, bright guy. He works in the philanthropic sector. But his comment was, in messaging, we need to be focusing on providing the certainty of the process. So telling people what we're going to do, and not on the certainty of the outcome, i.e. what it will happen, because we don't know what will happen. So if we focus on providing certainty of process versus certainty of outcome, our partners will be there long-term with us, I think. And as Judy's pointed out, there are companies that want to step up to the plate today, and there will be people that want to step up to the plate tomorrow, because they want the community to know that they helped during this pandemic period or post-pandemic period. And that's the other part, the recovery that's going to happen. I mean, Calgary is still recovering from a flood in 2013, 7 years ago. It'll be June this year, it'll be 7 years. There is still a recovery process going there. I mean, the Red Cross still has a ton of money that it can allocate back out into the communities. You take a look at not just Calgary, but High River, it's still recovering 7 years later. So sponsorship is not going to just be about today and tomorrow. It's going to be for the next several years to recover from this global pandemic.
Can I pipe in?
Yes.
Is Leslie Haber, and I've been in the sponsorship game for the last 30 years, and I'm currently working for a company that is a not-for-profit association in the food and beverage industry. So you can imagine how badly hit the community has gotten during this period of time. But I have to agree with Brent. We are building towards recovery. And I have to agree with Judy, obviously my sister, that this too shall pass. And as early as this morning, I was speaking to sponsors who were at my last event. We slid in. Our event was the beginning of March. We were very, very fortunate, although people were skittish about the news of COVID-19. We had a very successful event, and our sponsors have come back to us to partner to help the communities that are in need. And we obviously are leveraging that to help our association and our outreach to ensure that these kinds of workers in this industry are getting the help they need and the financial aid they need. But with regards to our event, and I know that things are different in the United States, Victoria, but I work with a lot of Americans, companies, and they are all on board for 2021 and are stepping up their outreach to our community. So we are a national based association, and we've had over 800,000 layoffs And as you can imagine, our board of directors is just reeling because, you know, you have Tim Hortons sitting on the board and they're letting go of thousands and thousands of employees. So we've stepped up and we are leveraging COVID-19 as an association to get the appropriate messaging out, and it's giving us revenue to do so and to keep the association alive. So our show is business as usual. We're going forward with our newsletters, our magazines, our websites. They've never been busy. As a matter of fact, our digital traffic is tracking out of the roof right now. So I really think it's about perception and what you're offering, and the communities will come back. And Victoria, I think your business will come back. I mean, you know, being in the exposition business, you know, our stadiums, you know, are a little worried about what the future will hold, but we're all moving along as how do we support one another, and we know that this will break at some point in time. So for us, it's, you know, let's start planning now. Let's putting our partnerships in place now, and helping the community, not just at our events, but all year round.
Okay, so can I interrupt for, can I interrupt? Okay, well, Leslie, thank you. I was just speaking on behalf of the municipality. I'm actually in digital content. So
Oh, great.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. So, I mean,
yeah, you can't be upset about the numbers, right? They're
I mean, but we, you know, we're an animation studio. My team's from Sesame Street.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, I created a digital television series for kids called Planet Blue. And so, you know, we're looking for sponsors for our digital content. So this actually, unfortunately, but for us in a good way, it does benefit us that we are digital on worldwide platforms. So,
yes, certainly with your focus on children, because they're all at home right now.
Yes, and we can add COVID-19 PSAs, but I do think in 6 months, hopefully we don't want to hear about COVID-19 again. We'll have a vaccine and we'll move on.
Well, it's definitely going to be about 1.5 years out before a vaccine will be readily available.
That's true. That's true. But you know, I think you're in the United States. I get the briefings every day. But the other thing I was going to say, yeah, just that I own a digital company, so an animation studio. So it doesn't affect us as much. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I was not part of the arena or Disney as far as getting sponsorships for them. That's all.
Okay.
Brad, Brent just made a good comment about digital and how important it should be.
And I think that's really, you know, kind of, there's a couple questions there about moving digital, moving virtual, and what events you can take. So we've got a client we're working with who had a series of events plus a massive conference planned in Banff in June, and they've just had to totally cancel everything across the board through to the end of June, which tallies about 40–50% of their annual income. So we've been working with them to transition to online platform. Their partners have eaten it up. So move to 18 webinars that are going to be hosted between now and the end of June, all led by their individual partners. They're able to do their thought leadership that they would have provided at the conference or as a breakfast series. So there's people spending money in that space or shifting their dollars from the live in-person events to other activities. Leslie, definitely, you said you've kind of moved to that digital space and you're showing value. You know, if people are having challenges with that, we've got some suggestions from Sponsor Circle. We've got people on our team who've got experience delivering in that space. Well, actually, I'm speaking for Mary Beth, who has been in that space for 15 years prior to coming to Sponsor Circle. There's opportunity and there's time. People are sitting at home, and you know, as much as people are kind of trying to deal with homeschooling their kids and, you know, taking care and babysitting for their kids while they're trying to do their work, they're still taking part in sessions like this. It's great to see the engagement. And I'll throw it out there, if anybody else is doing anything really cool in terms of moving to virtual, or whether you're challenged with it, you know, definitely open to that. And I see, Brent, you're making some comments as well.
can I add one more thing about Orlando?
Of course.
Just real quick. So Lockheed Martin, this is the one thing that's concerning me as a digital content looking for sponsors. Lockheed Martin was one of the companies we reached out to sponsor our environmental series for kids. They have since, you know, obviously with this COVID-19, which is great, they've given $63 million to support the COVID-19 fight. So I think that a lot of your major companies are going to start allocating dollars more to the COVID-19 crisis than to, say, sponsorships such as myself. That's just that I think a lot of their budgetary annual budget is now being focused towards COVID relief.
And again, you are unique. I think you're the only American on the call.
I love Canada. I've been there many times.
We love America. Well, parts of it.
Maggie's going to pipe up at some point from Atlanta.
Yes. Our healthcare system, yeah, and I agree. I mean, thank God America and American companies are stepping up to the plate, because I'm going to try not to get political, but obviously the government is not supporting healthcare the way it is supported here in Canada. So I think that is a reality for you, that you're going to see, sponsorship dollars going towards saving lives.
Yeah, we need. I mean, that's when you hear. I don't know if you guys get our briefings here, but we're doing a public-private sector collaborative effort now here in America, because obviously our public infrastructure doesn't really step up to the plate like they should. So we're having to bring in our private as well.
Yeah, so we've got a couple minutes left, and just kind of looking at, if you've got last questions, feel free to drop them in. I know I'm open to taking any calls or emails privately afterward, as are Judy and Brent and a number of other people who are on here, Jen Bishop. We've got experience in the space, willing to help and provide some advice as well as services if needed. But I think my experience in terms of coming out of the crisis is it's going to end. It's taking what Brent has said, that you need to be communicating with your partners and doing right by your partners. So the force majeure elements of your contract and trying to enforce getting $10,000 from your sponsor for them to pay when they're going through challenges may not be the right approach right now. If you work with them, help them through a challenge they're having, it's just going to build that relationship going forward. But you do have the challenges on the ground about needing funds in. Definitely from a municipal standpoint, the public health dollars have probably blown every budget across the country. So there's going to be challenges placed on all of us to bring more dollars in, to find new ways to do that. But it's starting to think ahead. Starting to plan with your partners and to figure out what their challenges are. I know one of the other clients we're working with, their partners, they're frozen for now, but they're saying, we still have our KPIs that we need to deliver on. We still need to figure out ways to do this. So it's converting some of the activities that are going on now that'll help funnel that. So maybe it doesn't happen this quarter, but what can happen at the end of the year to help support them? Because you're still dealing with somebody who's got to report into their boss, and they need to justify their relationship with you. And the more you can do to help them, the better. And Judy, do you have anything to add to it?
No, I mean, it's where we started, and it is time to sign off. It's business as usual for most of us on this call. We're responsible for our bottom line. Some of us have to generate it to keep our jobs. Municipalities are cutting, and they'd be very silly to cut those people who can generate new money. And I'm very optimistic. A, we'll get through this, but B, companies are giving, and we've got evidence of it all over the place. It's just a question of how you package it, the process that you go through, and getting the engagement and the commitment from your council. For those of us who are municipally oriented, if you can use your mayor's name legitimately, and that will help no, everyone will take your call. If you say Mayor blah, blah, blah is asked me to call you, and that's legitimate, they'll take your call. And that's 90% of the game. So
Great.
stay strong.